what's going on, guys? Welcome to the channel. I'm Ben. Today I'm going to be making good on a promise that I made during the adventure build video on the TW200 back here. If you guys missed that video, I can put a link for it down in the description. I added a lot of things that I think will really come in handy during the next camping adventure that I plan on taking this bike on. And because I swapped out my old Yamaha rack for this new Tusk one, which no longer uses the studs from the signal lights as support for the rack, now I'm able to use these Tusk mini stock signals. But on an older, somewhat analog style bike like a TW, the wiring for the signal light indicator and really the signal lights themselves kind of have an issue when you go to an LED turn signal like this. So there's a couple things that you're going to need to do on either your TW or really any bike that's going to have a similar dash indicator setup. And I will have links for everything that I'm using in this video down below. If you guys have a different bike, I think this could still be helpful, but you probably need maybe something a little bit different when it comes to the rewiring of the bike. But I think it should be good information just the same. So let's get into it. Now the backside here, everything is pretty straightforward. We just have to loosen up the nuts that hold the old turn signals in place, snip the zip ties, find where the bullet connectors are, pull them apart, and pull the old ones off. Then the new ones, as you'll notice here, have a slightly smaller stud, but they still seem to fit in the hole just fine here. And basically we just kind of do the reverse here. Everything gets wired together essentially the same way. The front here is a little bit more complicated, and we'll need to pull the headlight cowl off. So if you guys haven't pulled one of these off before, we just had to remove that fastener down at the bottom, and then each side will just have this little clasp that goes around the rubber grommet here. And with both of those removed, this will just sort of pull off the front. And then on each side of the headlight right here, we're gonna have a bolt to take out. And then with those removed, this will just sort of tilt forward and you can just pick it right up. And if you guys are wondering how I've got this installed, I've actually just got a 3D printed bracket that sort of holds this light in place, and then that bracket fits into the original headlight bracket here. I can put a link for the video where I did this down in the description. So the front's not all that much different, but there are a couple things that I think are worth noting. One is that in order to get this to sort of stand off far enough from this bracket to stick out from the headlight cowl, I needed to stick 5 washers on the back side of this. That's still more than enough for me to get the nut on the back side here. And you definitely don't want to go crazy tight with these. I also would not recommend putting Loctite on them because you will end up tearing this inside here out when you go to undo it later. Just snug that up. Now the other big difference between these mini stocks that I went with and the stock signal lights up front is that originally on my bike, they would actually be just illuminated anytime the key was on, and then they would shut down and blink on and off and on and off when you would hit the signal light. These are just a 2-wire system, so they do not have a running light. They're just a ground and a power like the rear. So essentially I just won't plug these in the little wire loom in here to that running light. And I actually am going to use that port on here for a different accessory, which is going to be my Tusk 12-volt outlet here that I've got VHB taped to the side of my little control pod here. And this is essentially just what powers my Garmin GPS here. And for those of you who may be interested in that, there's a little look at how I've got this thing rigged up. I can put some links down in the description for that stuff. This is just a Garmin Nuvi 40LM that I picked up off of eBay for 20 bucks. If I turn the signal lights on, it will basically just kind of stay in the on position, because the way that the bike currently shows me that one of the signals are flashing is by passing electricity through a bulb in here. One direction if it's one signal, and then the other direction if it's the other signal. And with LEDs, you can only run current through them one way, where an incandescent bulb, it doesn't really care. It's just a filament in there that has electricity running across it. So because of this, we're gonna need something to kind of straighten things out. And this is gonna be the TST Industries diode kit for a bike with running lights. Some TWs don't have running lights on the front. And because these Tusk mini stocks don't have a running light, it would seem sort of odd that I ordered the running light kit, but this is supposedly also going to make that indicator work correctly, along with just making these function correctly. So I've already got this little boot thing kind of flipped inside out so I can get to my 2 plugs in here. We've got this one that used to be clear, now it's more yellow than anything, and then a black one underneath it. So I'm gonna be unplugging this one and essentially sticking this in between those 2 original plugs. And then these 2 wires here, I'm gonna use these little connectors to pierce the connections on the back side of the black plug here. And I'll show you that when we get to that part. Oh. So on this one, we're going to want to plug into the dark brown connector on the sort of clasp side here, and then kitty corner to that, we're going to tap into this green one. I'm going to unwrap this so we can get to it. Easy enough so far. So we'll be tapping those in somewhere around there. If you guys haven't seen these little connectors, these are really pretty cool. I usually use the cheap ones, but these are much nicer. So this end is gonna go around the original factory wire, and then this will get screwed down into it, and that little point will pierce the shielding and tap into the connection, and then this side will go on our other lines here. So we'll start with the dark brown. Just get that snug down and call it good. I'm going to take this other end off of here. This one, we're going to slip connector over the end and then drop that down in there. Of course, want to make sure that that wire is staying down in there and is going to get pinched. Always do a tug test on electrical stuff, because if it's going to come out, you want it to happen now, not when you're on the trail. Grab my green connection over here and do the same process. So with that all squared away in there, not only should our signal lights work, but the indicator on the dash should be working as well. And it sort of all is, except we've got this hyper flash going on, and maybe some of you like it to be this fast. If you don't, though, the fix is really not too difficult. All we've got to do is swap the stock relay out for this aftermarket Tusk LED one. Pull the stock one off here and then disconnect it. So I'm just going to push in on that tab and then lift up on the sides. The new one here is a little bit different. We don't have this nice little tab on the back to mount it with like the old one did. So I'll probably have to end up zip tying this in place one way or the other. But the plug itself is of course going to interface the same. So that'll just plug in to the pigtail on the bike. So we've got an extra bit of cable here, and I definitely don't want that anywhere near my exhaust pipes. I think what I'm going to do is kind of stuff this up behind the frame tube and then actually just zip tie the new flasher relay to the little rubberized mount in here. Now there we go, not the prettiest thing, but seems somewhat isolated. So with all that, if we turn the bike on and hit the turn signal, we get a nice flashing LED. So if you guys remember back when I had the TW200 that my dad now owns, I stuck a set of these on the front and back of that bike and really kind of put them through the ringer and never had an issue with them. So I'm pretty confident with them on the TW. And while they're certainly not the most expensive or the brightest turn signals out there, they are definitely a good budget option. And honestly, they really do make a pretty big improvement over the stock turn signals. They're a bit smaller, but they definitely provide a much quicker on and off flash rather than the sort of slow power up and slow power off. Now, that's not to say that they're not bright. They definitely have a good flash when you're looking directly at them, but once you get off to the side a little bit, it's not quite as intense. I highly recommend replacing your reflectors if you go with some sort of a tail tidy like this. It is the law, and it definitely makes sense to have something that makes you a little bit more visible on the side of the trail or the side of the road at night. This reflector that I've got kind of VHB taped to the back of my license plate has been there a while. I did have to stick some new ones on the new rack since the old ones were just stuck to the side of the old rack. So if you guys want to pick up any of this stuff, like I said, there'll be links down in the description. If you use those links, it doesn't cost you any extra, but it's really the only thing that helps me be able to make videos like this continually for you guys. So I definitely appreciate that. Huge thanks to all my patrons out there. Thank you to you guys for your added support each month. Also helps me basically be able to keep doing this, and I really appreciate that because I love making videos. So thanks for watching, guys. Take care, stay safe, stay swanky, get out, enjoy this beautiful world any chance you get, and if you can do it right now, here's some more videos to check out in the meantime.